So today we're talking about the jigsaw and the safety involved in the jigsaw. First and foremost, this is not a jigsaw. This is a scroll saw. The former teacher referred to this as a jigsaw, but the difference between a jigsaw and a scroll saw is this. This isn't a jigsaw. A jigsaw, the blade is held on one side and it basically cuts up and down like this. The blade is nice and sturdy. There's an actual jigsaw over there. It's a tabletop version. This fits into the table and you can cut with it like this to work with, but and the blade is not held on the top. But for that type of situation, this blade has to be really big and heavy, which is not going to get tiny little cuts. Okay? A scroll saw has the blade held on the top and the bottom, just like a coping saw that you guys have been using before, where it's held on the top and the bottom. So this is technically a scroll saw. With a scroll saw, you get a much smaller blade, which allows you to get much tinier little cuts. Okay? I'm going to show you how to remove and put a new blade on this scroll saw, but the various different scroll saws around the room have different ways of accomplishing this. So you're going to have to ask me if you want to switch out the blade or insert a blade into a different tool. I might tell you just figure it out yourself, because based on how much I think that you can figure it out yourself, or I might just show you. Okay? This blade has a certain amount of tension on it. You can hear it. Okay, that tension is caused because of this tensioning knob back here, that if I turn it to the left, it gets tighter, and it should actually change the pitch. Hear it getting lower? That's because I'm taking away the tension. As I put more tension, it gets higher. Okay, just like a piano string or a guitar string. So if I wanted to change this blade, I could loosen the tension, which is causing this thing right here to go down, which allows the blade to be pulled out. And you'll see this is just like a coping saw blade in that it has pins on both sides of it so that it can be grabbed a hold of and pulled. Okay? The scroll saw over there has things that hold onto it like this on the top and the bottom. It pinches it like that, so it doesn't need pins involved. It just grabs a hold of it on the top and the bottom like that. But this one right here has pins. So because it has pins, you need to kind of nestle it into a little slot where it holds onto those pins. The first thing you need to know for the test is that the teeth on this, remember on the coping saw how the teeth needed to point towards the handle so that it would cut when you pulled? Okay? This tool cuts on the downward stroke, or it's supposed to cut on the downward stroke. As the blade is going down, that's when it cuts. Let me show you what that looks like. If I'm cutting on the downward stroke, the board doesn't move around because as it's cutting, it's pulling it down into the tabletop. However, if I turn the blade around, it cuts on the upward stroke, it's going to be doing that. And I'll tell you what I can hear across the room. This is what I'm going to hear as you're trying to cut your wood. Because every time it's cutting, it's lifting the board off the table. So, when you install the blade, you need to make it so the teeth are pointing downward, because this machine cuts on the downward stroke. Okay. And then you add the tension. Don't keep muscling it until you can't, as tight as you can, because it'll actually pull the pins off. Okay, you just need to add some tension on there, make sure that it's got some tension to it, and then that's good enough. You have to have my permission to use any of these tools. Anything that's plugged into the wall, you need to say, Mr. Olson, can I use the scroll saw? Mr. Olson, can I use the sander? Mr. Olson, can I use the drill press? You need to be specific about what you want to use. And I might ask you, I might say, well, bring me your work. And I might say, why don't you go use that gray tool over there? Go use the yellow scroll saw over there. Okay? But you have to ask me to use these tools. Wood that you're cutting on this particular machine needs to be flat on the top and the bottom and of an equal thickness. The reason for that has to do with this hold down adjustment. The hold down adjustment is supposed to be set just about as close as possible to the work, which is the words off the test. That's so that when you run your board around underneath this thing, it stays evenly with your wood. If your wood was different thicknesses, then you would find that it would get stuck and it wouldn't want to fit underneath the hold down. If your wood was not flat on the top and the bottom, if it was not flat on the bottom, then your board would move around, which would cause your blade to bend and twist and possibly break. Okay? And if it wasn't flat on the top, then it would keep bumping into the hold down adjustment. So, wood used on this machine should be flat, top and the bottom, equal thickness. Okay? Regarding the blade being the proper size, as I mentioned earlier with the actual jig saws, the blades are much fatter. And because they're so fat, they cut really big arcs. You can't really cut a tiny little curve with a big fat blade, okay? So if you want to be able to cut intricate little things, think jigsaw puzzle piece, then you need to have a really tiny blade. But that tiny blade is also weaker and more likely to break when you're working with it. So there's a balancing act there. If you have a thinner piece of wood and you're trying to do small little curves, then yeah, you're going to need a small blade. If you have a big piece of wood and you're trying to cut a big straight line, then you probably want a bigger blade, okay? For the most part, you guys are just going to be using the blade that I have here on the saw, unless you have a specific need for some other blade. You never make any adjustments whatsoever on this machine while it is moving. You let it come to a complete and total dead stop. And to make that point, I want to go over here to this machine. You can follow me over here. And I want to point out the difference here of 12 seconds. Stay. I'd rather you went back to where you were. That way when she turns around, she's not going to catch you in the video. Please go back. Jason, go back. You don't need to be over here to hear this. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's stopping faster than it used to. About 12 seconds difference between off and stop. Off just means you turn the machine off. Stop means that it has come to a complete stop. There's a big difference there, so please don't make that mistake on the test. You never make any adjustments to the machine until it comes to a complete, total dead stop. You don't clean it off until it comes to a stop. You do not walk away from these machines until they come to a complete, total dead stop. Okay, that is very important. You want to make sure that there's enough tension on the blade. If there isn't enough tension, the blade's going to move around. It's going to become weak and it's not going to cut nicely for you. Once again, you want to adjust the hold down adjustment so it is as close as possible to work. Regarding turning the machine on and off quickly, that's more important for things in the past. The scroll saws we used to have, if you had this thing adjusted up here and you turned it on, it would make a really loud noise. Hear that? That's not very dramatic. But in the last tool, if you turned it on, it would go bam, 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 bam. And people would turn on the machine and then it would make that noise and then they'd freak out and step back while the machine destroys itself. So it's less of an issue on this one. However, the concept is you just turn it on and off just to make sure everything looks like it's working correctly. Make sure that all moving parts are clear so you know you're ready to go. Okay, so you turn the machine on and off quickly to make sure that all moving parts are clear. Remember, the area on the floor is called the safety zone, and make sure you stay out of it unless you're the operator of the machine. Only the operator of the machine should be in the safety zone. You never cut any stock that is round or irregular. So nothing that, like a dowel, you don't cut that. Remember, flat, top to bottom, equal thickness. Irregular, like a chess piece. Once again, flat, top to bottom, equal thickness. Nothing round or irregular or odd or weird shape. You know, this is a straightforward machine for regular lumber. You want to keep your hands and fingers clear of all moving parts at all times. Don't put your hands in anything where it's spinning around. Keep your hands away from any parts that are moving around. Okay? You also want to keep your hand out of the path of the blade. So you do not want to run your hand towards the blade. When I was 18 years old, I was working at a factory where we made cutting boards. And it was pretty cool because they shipped all around the world. I guarantee you there are cutting boards made by me in Russia, China, Philippines, whatever. You pick a country, and they're out there, somewhere in there, somebody's sitting at their kitchen table cutting on a cutting board that I made when I was 18 years old. It's kind of a cool thing. Anyways, while I was working there on a bandsaw, which is the coping saw is like the kid version of this. The scroll saw is the moderate version, kind of a kid. You guys, teenagers, could probably get away with using without hurting yourselves. The bandsaw over there, in fact, oh no, don't turn that way. Those tools over there are the very scary tools. Those are bandsaws, and they work very much like this tool, except for the fact that they are much more aggressive, and they will chop your finger off like nothing. In fact, they use them in butcher shops to cut through cows. So yeah, they're going to take off your hand if you get near them. That's why you're not allowed to use them. The bandsaws, the big green one over there and the Delta over there. Okay, so don't even think that, oh, those are the same thing, you can go over there and use them. This one, on the other hand, is going to give you a small little cut which you can put a Band-Aid on and get away with, unless you're really aggressively stupid about it. okay? Unless you really jam your hand into it, you're not gonna hurt yourself badly with this particular saw. At the same time, you should still not run your hand towards the saw. So I lost track. When I was working with a bandsaw, when I was 18 years old, I was cutting a piece of wood, and I slipped. And my hand, here's the blade, I went like, bzz, like that, and I put a cut on my finger like that, and I was just like, wow. I sat down for a long time and thought about how much I love my fingers, because I know just a tiny bit more pressure would have just taken off my thumb. Okay, now you're not going to lose any fingers in this class because the tools we're using are not that aggressive. However, at the same time, just don't push your hand towards a moving blade of any kind. Okay, keep your hand out of the path of the blade is what you need to remember for the test. When you're feeding your work into the machine, you want to be at a moderate rate of speed. Not too fast, not too slow. If you go too fast, you're going to break the blade. If you go too slowly, it's going to create too much friction. It's going to burn your work. It's going to heat up the blade, which is going to mess with the integrity of the metal of the blade, which is going to cause it to snap. Okay? So you're not going to cause a fire, but you'll cause burn marks on your work that are going to be hard to sand away later, and you're going to break the blade. So the answer is a moderate rate of speed. Nice, medium speed. Don't go so slow because you're trying to be ultra careful, because then you're just going to burn your work and break the blade. But don't go too fast because you're going to break the blade. So moderate rate of speed is what you're looking for there. If there's anything wrong with the machine in any way, you got to tell me about it. It's making a weird sound, it's not working properly. Don't just walk away from the machine, okay? Because then parts get lost and the tool is down for a week because somebody swept up a part. So if there's something wrong with the machine, you make sure you tell me about it. Never walk away from the machine until it comes to a complete stop. Adjustments are only made when the machine comes to a complete stop. Don't forget to keep your glasses on at all times in this classroom. Safety glasses are absolutely required at all times in this classroom. All right, I think that's the end of our demonstration. Thank you.